Hey guys, good morning. We officially have dirt. That's about half of what we have left, and this is what the garden is currently looking like after a week of a lot of hard work. It's officially the first cooler morning of the fallish season. So I figured I would just sit out here, drink my coffee, and give you guys an update on what this garden is doing. All right, so hopefully I get the rest of this dirt moved today, and tomorrow we are supposed to have really awesome temperatures in the 70s. This whole part up until now has been done in 90-degree heat, which has been really hard. And I will also note it's a lot harder to remove soil out of garden beds than it is to start new and put new soil into garden beds. When that soil is really compact and you have boundaries like this, it definitely takes 3 to 4 times longer. I swear a few of those beds would take me 2 to 3 hours at least. Even though I time lapsed a lot of this footage, you would never be able to tell that it took me 2 to 3 hours to take dirt out of a garden bed, but it did. You may have noticed we still have one of our wooden garden beds still up that has all of the lettuce and bok choy. We are leaving that. There's no need to go ahead and move that. We don't need to move that until we start cutting down the tree, because we can't add the additional 3 garden beds that are going to go right there until that tree is down. And there's also 2 garden beds that aren't up as well. That's where this huge dirt pile is. So the project started last Monday, and my whole goal was just to get out my hoop house and my one 8x4 garden bed, because I knew that's where the soil was going to be dumped. It pretty much turned into calling the soil company, asking them if we could schedule our delivery for Monday instead of Friday. And then me and my husband literally just worked on this every single day up until now today. I think there might have been one day in there that something didn't get done. Maybe it was Friday. I think it was Friday. I was so sore at that point. I was like, you know what? I really need a day to relax. So this project is probably only 33% of the way done. Again, we need to get all of these beds filled. And then where all of the garden beds are, we're actually going to mulch this grass. I mean, it's just going to be a lot easier than having to trim and mow it and all that. We're still going to have that huge grass patch behind there where that tree is. That's where the chickens will go, and that's also where my dog can use the restroom when he needs to. So that whole area will still be grass. That whole area is pretty much not being touched because that tree. So yeah, that tree ends up shading out a lot during fall, and I always forget this. So that was actually something I randomly wanted to mention while I talked to you guys. So one tip, if you are looking at starting a garden, redesigning your garden, always check where the sunlight lays. This garden is kind of interesting because since that tree right there is on the south end of my property, once it becomes fall, it actually does cast shade on half of this garden. It doesn't really do anything crazy. I definitely can't grow stuff as fast, but that's something to account for. Is a lot of my vegetables and everything are currently over there because that's the area that is not currently being messed with, but it's also not getting as much sunshine, so things won't grow as fast as they would if they were in full direct light. But that is definitely a tip. Watch where the sun is majority of the time. Obviously, as seasons change, we're not going to have as much sunlight, but that's definitely something you want to take note of if you are designing or redesigning a garden space. One thing I wanted to mention, so on day 1, I actually transferred all of my broccoli, transplanted all of my broccoli, and I wasn't sure how that was going to go because I planted it. Long story short, we did not have this plan to expand the garden at all until about a week and a half ago at this point, and now look at where we're at. We kind of just dove head first. Either way, I was able to transplant my broccoli and my cabbage. They rooted, they look so wonderful, so I'm very happy I did not lose those plants because I was really hyped about potentially having some purple broccoli this year. And speaking of just that in general, so all of my cabbage and broccoli starts were in my hoop house, and when I originally told you guys about this space last week, I think I told you guys the wrong number of garden beds. So I believe I said 15 8x4s. I technically have 16 8x4s because I was not counting the hoop house in that equation. So I will have 16 8x4 garden beds. I have a 4x4 grow bag, 20 plus other grow bags. I have a 10 by 20 in-ground area. So this is a huge expansion. I am so pumped. I've already been digging through all the different seeds, and oh my gosh, I am so pumped about this one seed that I'm getting my hands on. So here in Kansas, you guys have probably experienced it. If not, just know vine borer is very relevant in this state, and it's really hard to grow any type of squash or vining vegetables unless you have some type of disease resistant seed. And I actually found a butternut squash cross that is vine borer resistant. So I'm very hyped about that. The trellis tunnel will probably not be up, my guess, until like spring. I mean, fully by spring. I think by the time we get the tree down, the ground will probably be hard at that point. We probably won't be able to add the whole tunnel. So really, in reality, this whole space won't be done probably by spring, but majority of it will be done. The whole point, if you're new here and you didn't see last week's video, why would I be doing this in September of this year? And it's mostly because I have a bunch of garlic on the way, so much so that I can plant out 3 of my garden beds. And if I weren't to go ahead and do this now, I would just have a cluster next year again. So this is going on year 5, so 2022 will be year 5 for this garden space. And when I first started, I had 1 garden bed and a handful of grow bags, and every single year we've just kind of added on, and that ended up equating to a lot of wasted space. And this is definitely using all the space I possibly can in this garden at this point. I did make a dinner menu to make sure all of this lettuce and bok choy does get used in the next 4 weeks. I definitely did not want that to go to waste. I have a ton of stuff still cranking out in this garden, guys. I have some tomatoes, I have a ton of veggies, I have cucumbers, green beans, a bunch of herbs. It's just honestly crazy. I didn't think I'd end up having this much. I was really excited to be able to save my 1 volunteer tomato plant because it's just now starting to ripen, and it's gonna give me like a good amount of tomatoes, and I really did not want to rip that out. I did have to rip out quite a few green beans that would have matured here in the next like 3-ish weeks, like right before my first expected frost date would come. But sometimes you just kind of need to do what you got to do, and I'm so excited that I probably won't have to move compost in the spring. If I do, let's hope it's a very small amount, but this will be the first spring that we won't be adding on during spring, which will be so nice. Because I feel like every year we just, once March comes, it's like, all right, what can we add? And then we just add it real fast. But this year I will be going into winter with everything kind of set to where I can have just a really awesome garden plan going into the new year. So with the soil, I mentioned this in a video in the spring when I got 4 cubic yards trucked in. I got 12 cubic yards yesterday. And honestly, guys, if you look up compost delivery in your area or topsoil delivery in your area, there should be some places that pop up, and I've always known it to be the cheaper option, especially to fill raised garden beds. What we're doing here, if you can't tell, is we actually added half topsoil, and then we're adding half compost on top of that. That just gives a little bit of an additional savings. Not much, but it definitely adds up, especially when you have this many garden beds. So one other thing that I really wanted to mention to you guys that I found so interesting that I actually almost forgot to mention to you guys is the fact that when I was digging out these garden beds, I actually noticed that all of my earthworms were gone, and then there was an abundance of centipedes and grubs. So then I was researching, because I moved all this dirt back here, I was researching that with grubs and centipedes, they actually eat earthworms. How crazy, right? They're part of like the predators for earthworms. So I went from having an abundance of earthworms to, from what I've known, none. There are a few things I can do. So one thing to do that I read is to strip them of all their food sources. So like any type of roots or anything like that. Which, speaking of, I think I actually caused this problem myself because of last year. So I made a video last year talking about overwintering with fall leaves and mulching with fall leaves. Well, one thing I learned during this whole process of digging out dirt is apparently centipedes will actually feed on dead leaves. And then the other thing I did last year was, instead of pulling out all of my root systems, I let all of my root systems overwinter in the ground because I read that could be good for earthworms and microbes and all of that. Well, apparently it's just as good for grubs, and that's grubs' food sources. So if you have an overabundance of grubs the next year, kind of like I did, that could have been part of the cause. So one thing you want to do is strip them of all of their food sources, which that has now been done. And I also laid some diatomaceous earth all over there. So one thing to know about diatomaceous earth is it will kill earthworms if it's in a situation like that, where you're putting it throughout the entire soil. But in my case, I already didn't have any earthworms and I needed to go ahead and kill the bad bugs. But I wanted just to mention that to you guys, because that was quite the experience for a few days trying to figure that out. I was asking all sorts of garden groups, I was doing a bunch of research, and that has pretty much came to conclusion that such a simple matter as centipedes and grubs are eating my earthworms, which I found absolutely interesting. But either way, I am gonna go make me some breakfast, finish this coffee, and then I have a dirt pile that needs to be accomplished. But I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on everything that's been going on this last week. I apologize for any boringness that might be coming. I just wanted to keep you guys informed. I promise you there will be better content than me just talking to my camera, giving you guys updates like I have, like, I think the last 3 weeks. So either way, guys, I'll see you guys all next week. I hope you have a good week. Bye!